Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Football Podcast. It is me, Joe Pisapia, and it's time to look ahead to rookies that might shock you this NFL season. Now, everybody knows the big names. These are some lesser names that might actually have some really important productivity that could help you not just compete, but maybe even win some leagues. And to help us break them down, Jake Ciely from The Athletic, and of course, D-Bro, Derek Brown, the king of bros. Jake Ciely, let's start with you here. Give me a player that maybe some folks might be sleeping on already when we're looking ahead to the 2025 redraft season that could make a huge impact.
Yeah, I want to come out of the gate with one that could shock me because it's somebody I was a little bit lower on until I found out his landing spot. And it's Pat Bryant. Look, I think he's a strong wide receiver, really good in space against the zone, good at contested catches. And, I was like, I could see a wide receiver 4 in some teams. But then he goes to the Broncos. He goes to Sean Payton, who immediately drew the comparisons to Michael Thomas. And I'm not saying he's going to be Michael Thomas. Let me make that clear. But similar to Michael Thomas, who wasn't thought of much when he came out, like to the degree that he was when he came out of college, it's a perfect landing spot for the type of wide receiver, the type of offense, and the type of head coach. This is just a perfect scenario. So if you found somebody that could step in alongside of Cortland Sutton, Bo Nix takes another step forward this year and has his Michael Thomas, albeit a lesser version, and he turns into a wide receiver 3, that's going to shock people because most people would probably think of Pat Bryant as a bench stash. So I think a shocking performance, maybe even 1,000 yards, 6, 7, 8 touchdowns, I think it could happen for Pat Bryant, and it's somebody that I came up on after the draft.
All right, D-Bro, I know the first name on your list is a running back who landed in Denver. So why is RJ Harvey the guy that people should be paying attention to, and what could he do in 2025?
Well, I have to mention his name. Like, he's not a guy that's going to go like way down the boards right now, but I think we are still sleeping on his upside and his floor. And ECR right now, he's RB28, and that is just it's emphatically too low for a player that I'm not worried about. Audric Estime, I'm not worried about Jaleel McLaughlin, I'm not worried about Tyler Beatty, I'm not worried about any of these other guys. I'm worried about the guy that Sean Payton invested second-round draft capital in. I'm worried about the guy that over the last 2 collegiate years has been top 20 in both breakaway percentage and elusive rating, and he falls into a backfield where Sean Payton has ranked 5th and 1st over the last 2 years in running back target share. So I have to mention him as a guy that he's being ranked as an RB3. He's a top 15 running back this year, and he's got RB1 upside. If he does that, he will shock people.
Yeah, I don't think he was the guy we expected to be there, but we all had our eyes very closely just locked in on the Denver Broncos on draft night going, all right, who's the running back I take? Because that void is there. So maybe Harvey is the guy to fill that void. Next on our list here at number 2 for Jake. Oh, Jake, I have an unhealthy love of this guy. I really do. Cam Skattebo is just fun. He's fun. He's football. If you love football and you don't like Cam Skattebo, there's something wrong with you. But how good can he really be? You got Tracy there. You got Singletary there. So I'm sure that's going to suppress his draft stock quite a bit. At the same time, you had Tracy, who had fumble issues last year. Singletary, who was another year older, and always just kind of been capable, but not really blowing the doors off. So what's the path here for fantasy productivity for Cam?
Hold on. Cam Skattebo. All right, I just want to see if we said its name 3 times that if Bogman would come running. I didn't know that.
That's
how I just
he comes out like the Kool-Aid guy from the wall. He just got to break.
I just double-checked under my desk. I don't see him, so not going to say that he doesn't pop up anywhere.
Perfect example, though. Scott Bogman loves football. Hard not to enjoy Cam Skattebo. It's a fun show, man. It's a fun show.
You made a lot of arguments for that. And what do we know about Brian Daboll and this team? And the Giants going back for years on end, they don't tolerate fumbles. And they gave Tracy a ton of chances last year. And he got yanked quite a few times off of a fumble. Still got more chances because of what you brought up. He was better than Devin Singletary. He's just a more dynamic runner. He's a better option. But what is Skattebo underrated in his pass catching ability, which is kind of why I tied in like a Josh Jacobs to his level before the draft, and the fact that he's going to be used in the passing game, which is the big concern for Tracy. I actually think this is Skattebo's backfield, and 60%, if not more, of the backfield is going to be his. And Tracy's a very fine and very talented complement that gives him a great 1-2 punch. Singletary is basically out of the equation at this point. And you put Skattebo even on this team, you're talking about top 30 running back value with a very likely potential of being an RB2 as a rookie.
Yeah, I like that. I also think they need a little bit of an edge, and he gives them that. They were kind of soft the last couple
He will
years.
not stop. Like you have to
and he
take
will
his
become
legs out.
such a fan favorite too. He's going to be a phenomenon. I remember back in the 80s, like Mark Bavaro, they used to call him Rambo, and they used to have all these signs for him and stuff like that. They just loved him because he was a tough guy, right? It's like that blue collar Giants kind of way. They've gotten away from that in a long time ago, and I think he kind of is bringing that back a bit. All right, before we get to the next guy on D-Bro's list, quick reminder, this video is brought to you by Fast Draft, one of the most innovative new best ball apps in the industry. Download Fast Draft in the App Store or Google Play and use the code FANTASYPROS when you sign up, and you'll get your first deposit matched up to $50. That's right. And that's up to 10 drafts for free only at Fast Draft. Download and play today. All right, D-Bro, let's go to the next guy on your list. And I mentioned in our last podcast together, I'm going to have a lot of shares of this dude.
He is being dismissed in early rankings right now. I'm going to bring up a wide receiver that is being ranked behind Matthew Golden, Luther Burden. He's being ranked behind Emeka Ibuka in redraft rankings. He's even being ranked behind his own teammate, who he's going to beat out for the wide receiver 2 spot in Quentin Johnston, and that is Tre Harris. He is going to be the wide receiver 2 in this offense. I'm not worried about Quentin Johnston. I'm not worried about Mike Williams. I don't even know if Mike Williams makes it out of camp. For a player that out of 77 qualifying wide receivers last year, Mike Williams, 76th in separation, 73rd in route win rate. Tre Harris is going to be the wide receiver 2, and outside of Ladd McConkey, guys, who is getting targets over Tre Harris in that offense? I don't see it, so I think he's going to shock people. And again, we're talking about a wide receiver that if you were to tell me we flip over the cards at the end of the year and Tre Harris has 1,000 yards and 8 to 10 touchdowns, we saw Quentin Johnston roll into a lot of touchdowns last year, I'm not going to be shocked at all.
And Jake, I feel like there's this sentiment going around too, where they're like, well, they just don't throw the football a lot. Well, they're not going to run the football much more than they ran it last year. And on top of which, you had so many moments where you had Quentin Johnston drop these big passes and these big moments, right? Then he was a drive killer at times. I know he had some touchdowns. He did have a few moments, but overall the performance has never been close to what it could have been. He's been a disappointment in the NFL. You know, they've moved on from Keenan Allen last year too. And you know, Mike Williams is Mike Williams. He's not a guy that's going to contribute at this stage in his career. So really the pathway does feel very open for Harris. Do you agree?
Oh, completely. I actually think he could be the number 2 at worst case 3 if we're including the backfield. I think Herbert last year could have had 4,000 yards and even insane, like already 23-3 touchdown interceptions. Could have even been better if that Quentin Johnston dropping probably 3 or 4 touchdowns himself. So yeah, I think that Herbert, does that mean Herbert's back inside the top 10 or top 12? No, but this is a team that can confidently pass a little bit more this year now that you have a capable number 2.
Now, the last guy on Jake's list is actually somebody that we talked about pre-draft, right? We did a show together, the 3 of us, where we discussed some of our favorite sleepers, where they might land potentially and where we hope. So let's talk about this guy that we're bringing back yet again, Jake Ciely, on this list. Yeah. This time, though, we're looking ahead to him, not just being a sleeper in the draft, but being a sleeper in actual fantasy drafts.
Absolutely. And the pre-draft comp that a lot of people wanted to make was Adam Thielen. I thought that kind of curbed or cut off his ceiling unfairly. I said Jordy Nelson is more like the ceiling for me, and that's Jack Bech, who I think has a non-zero chance to surpass Jakobi Meyers at this point. This isn't peak Jakobi Meyers anymore. And I know people are going to look at this team and be like, it's Geno Smith and Brock Bowers is the one. Well, okay, fine. Even if he's the 1 or the 2, we've seen this time and again with like the Chiefs. And no, I'm not calling Geno Smith Patrick Mahomes. I'm just saying where you could get the top wide receiver with a tight end commanding that much of the target share, still getting 20-25% of the target share, even with Meyers hanging around. And where I say that is like, if Meyers is the 1, and Bech is the 2, of course, probably only going to get wide receiver 4 or 5 value. But if Bech is what I believe he is, some of the best routes, some of the best hands, NFL-ready wide receiver with Jordy Nelson upside, he can get past Jakobi Meyers. And if he gets past Jakobi Meyers, we're talking wide receiver 3 or better with Geno Smith at quarterback versus what they had last year, and that would shock people.
D-Bro, your thoughts on Bech, too. I just want to get your take because this is a player that I know I liked as well. So what's your take on the landing spot for him and what he could do for people in 2025 in their fantasy teams?
I love the landing spot, and I agree with everything Jake laid out there. I mean, I think that he could be the number 2 target in that passing offense, and we've seen Geno support 2 to 3 targets in a passing offense. I mean, look what he did last year, and if Tyler Lockett wasn't on his last legs, like, could that have been an offense where we're talking about 3 top 40 wide receivers? And looking at Jack Bech, he could play outside, he could play inside. He's got enough speed to stretch the field, but I think he's going to eat up underneath targets. And in this offense, nobody's disputing Brock Bowers being the unquestioned 1, but the number 2 spot in that passing attack is firmly up for debate. Yeah, Jack Bech is probably the guy that, whether it's probably not out of week 1, but by week 4, week 5, we're seeing Jack Bech consistently out-targeting Jakobi Meyers. I think it's going to happen.
All right, Debro, give us the last guy on the list today. Player that just got drafted that could shock people this year in fantasy.
Again, ECR has got to wake up. Kaleb Johnson at RB30, yeah, he's going to shock people because you're looking at, okay, we're all saying, okay, he probably falls into the Najee Harris role. Do we all realize that Najee Harris got 299 touches last year? So but adding that to Kaleb Johnson's resume for 2025, I think it's fantastic. And the difference between him and Najee is the fact that Kaleb Johnson has a superpower that Najee Harris has never had, and that's the ability to break off long runs. For a player in Kaleb Johnson, it was 5th in breakaway percentage last year. His vision and his explosiveness, and I know everybody shades the 40. I don't freaking care about that because if you turn on the film, you look at the miles per hour and the GPS stuff.
The game speed.
It
game
is
speed's there.
awesome.
Yeah.
So I don't care that he didn't have a track background like everybody else and run fast at the combine. That doesn't matter to me. So looking at the role, the workload, and an offense that we know is going to feature the run, Kaleb Johnson is going to crush. He's going to be a top 20 running back. So yes, he will shock people because right now they're expecting RB3 level production. Basically, okay, this is new Najee Harris, and that is emphatically wrong.
How does Jalen Warren feel that you broke up with him this year for Kaleb Johnson?
I texted him. He hasn't texted me back. I called him. He hasn't called me back. It might be a Geno Smith situation, but maybe not. I don't know.
Hey, man, everyone just has to move on with their lives now. And hopefully you'll move on with your drafts smarter, being able to draft some of the names we just discussed here on this list. And make sure you follow us for more here on Fantasy Pros. Don't forget, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Right now, drop your comments below. Who are your rock star rookies that maybe people aren't going to see coming this fantasy season that are going to have a huge impact? We love to hear from all of you in the community here. And don't forget to ring the bell till it goes ding so you never miss a show here at Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. That'll do it for us. But the story of the game goes on. For Jake and Debro, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.